November 3, 1944. Herkin Forest, Germany. Oberfeldwebel Klaus Becker pressed his cheek against the cold stock of his Cariner 98K, his right eye aligned perfectly with the zeiscope that had made him a legend. Through the narrow field of view, he watched American infantry advancing through the fog-shrouded forest 400 meters distant. 257 confirmed kills. 3 years on the Eastern Front. Iron Cross First Class. The Knight's Cross with oak leaves. Becker was what the Wehrmacht called a Scharfschütze, a master sniper, an artist of death at distance. He selected his target, an American officer, identifiable by his posture and the way other soldiers oriented toward him. Easy shot. Becker's finger began the slow, steady squeeze that had ended 257 lives. The crack of his rifle was answered instantly by something Becker had never heard before, a thunderous, continuous roar of semi-automatic fire, not the slow, deliberate shots of bolt-action rifles, not the wild, inaccurate spray of machine guns, something in between, something impossible. 8 rounds per second, 40 rifles firing simultaneously, 320 .3006 rounds in the first 8 seconds, all aimed, all deadly accurate. Becker watched through his scope as his entire platoon, 32 men, veterans of Stalingrad and Kursk, simply ceased to exist. Not suppressed, not pinned down, annihilated. In 8 minutes of continuous fire, 40 American riflemen, armed with M1 Garands, killed or wounded 28 German soldiers. Becker survived only because he was far from the main position. As he crawled backwards through the undergrowth, his hands shaking for the first time in 3 years, one thought echoed in his mind. The Americans have brought machine guns disguised as rifles. We are fighting the future with weapons from the past. What Oberfeldwebel Becker encountered that November morning was the M1 Garand, the weapon that General George Patton would call the greatest battle implement ever devised. Within 6 months, this semi-automatic rifle would help destroy the Wehrmacht's Western Front defense, break the myth of German marksmanship superiority, and prove that American industrial democracy could create individual weapons as revolutionary as their tanks and planes. The German snipers and riflemen, masters of their craft with their precision bolt-action Mausers, were about to learn a terrible lesson. In modern warfare, adequate accuracy delivered rapidly beats perfect accuracy delivered slowly, and the M1 Garand could deliver 8 rounds of adequate accuracy faster than any bolt-action rifle could deliver 2 rounds of perfection. Klaus Becker had survived 3 years of the most brutal combat in human history. He would not survive his first month facing M1 Garands. And neither would the tactical doctrine, training methods, and weapons philosophy that had made German infantry feared throughout Europe. The sound of the Garand, that distinctive metallic ping as the empty clip ejected, would become the soundtrack of German defeat on the Western Front. It was the sound of the future destroying the past, the sound of 8 rounds delivered in 4 seconds. The sound of American infantry fire superiority so overwhelming that German soldiers began calling the Garand the devil's typewriter. And it all started with Klaus Becker watching his entire platoon die in 8 minutes. The myth of German rifle supremacy. August 1939, Schützenausbildung Training Ground, Grafenwohr, Germany. Hauptfeldwebel Otto Steiner stood before a class of Wehrmacht recruits, the Cariner 98K Mauser rifle gleaming in his hands like a sacred object. "This rifle," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of Prussian military tradition, "is the finest infantry weapon in the world, accurate to 800 meters, reliable in any condition, simple enough that any soldier can maintain it, precise enough that a skilled marksman can hit a man's head at 400 meters. Everything Steiner said was true. The Kar-98K was a magnificent weapon, the culmination of 40 years of Mauser design evolution. Its 5-round internal magazine fed smoothly. Its bolt action was butter smooth after proper break-in. Its accuracy was legendary. In the hands of a trained marksman, the 98K could consistently hit man-sized targets at ranges where American soldiers couldn't even see their enemies. The Wehrmacht's infantry training program, inherited from the Reichswehr's elite, emphasized marksmanship above all else. Recruits fired thousands of rounds. They learned to judge distance instinctively. They practiced from every position, standing, kneeling, prone, sitting. They learned to account for wind, temperature, humidity. By the time a Wehrmacht soldier reached the front, he could typically hit a man-sized target at 300 meters with iron sights, first shot. This level of skill terrified their enemies in Poland, France, and the early Russian campaigns. German infantry doctrine emphasized precision fire from covered positions, making every shot count. The Wehrmacht tactical doctrine built entirely around the Kar-98K's capabilities. Take position, identify target, aim carefully, fire, work bolt, aim again, fire. A trained soldier could fire 15 rounds per minute maximum. In reality, under combat conditions, 8 to 10 rounds per minute was more typical. The Germans augmented this precision rifle fire with the MG-42 machine gun, the fastest-firing machine gun in the world at 1,200 rounds per minute. The combination seemed unstoppable. Precision rifle fire from riflemen, overwhelming firepower from machine guns. This doctrine destroyed Poland in 28 days, France in 46 days, and drove deep into the Soviet Union. By 1943, German infantry supremacy seemed proven beyond question. Then American soldiers started landing in Europe carrying rifles that could fire as fast as they could pull the trigger.
The American Revolution. Springfield Armory, Massachusetts. Canadian-American firearms designer John Garand presented his prototype semi-automatic rifle to U.S. Army ordnance officers who were skeptical that any semi-automatic rifle could be reliable enough for military service. "Gentlemen," Garand said in his quiet, heavily accented English, "I understand your concerns. Semi-automatic rifles have traditionally been unreliable. This rifle is different." What followed was one of the most grueling weapons tests in military history. The Garand prototype was fired continuously until it jammed, then inspected, the problem fixed, and testing resumed. It was dragged through mud, submerged in water, frozen in ice, baked in ovens. It was dropped from trucks, thrown against walls, deliberately mishandled. It kept working. The revolutionary aspect wasn't just semi-automatic operation. It was the gas operating system Garand had perfected. A long-stroke piston that used gas pressure from the fired cartridge to cycle the action, eject the spent case, load a new round, and cock the hammer, all in the fraction of a second between shots. The rifle fired the powerful .3006 Springfield cartridge, the same round used in the bolt-action Springfield 1903. This meant identical range, identical accuracy, identical stopping power as the rifle it replaced, but with one critical difference: rate of fire. A trained soldier with an M1 Garand could fire 8 aimed shots in less than 5 seconds, reload in 2 seconds with an 8-round end-block clip, fire 8 more shots in 5 seconds. That's 16 aimed rounds in 12 seconds. A trained soldier with a Kar-98K could fire perhaps 8 aimed shots in those same 12 seconds, requiring manual operation of the bolt between each shot. 2 to 1 fire superiority from every single rifleman, not from machine gunners or special weapons, from the ordinary infantryman. January 9, 1936, the U.S. Army officially adopted the M1 Garand as its standard service rifle. It was the first semi-automatic rifle to be standard issue for any military in history. The Germans, despite their vaunted engineering, wouldn't field a semi-automatic rifle in significant numbers throughout the entire war. The production miracle. Winchester Repeating Arms Company, New Haven, Connecticut. Production manager James Wilson faced an impossible task: transform a company that made 400 rifles per day into one that could make 4,000. The challenge wasn't just scaling up production. The M1 Garand was significantly more complex than the bolt-action rifles Winchester had produced for decades. The Garand contained 53 individual parts that had to be machined to precise tolerances, then hand-fitted by skilled assemblers. American industrial ingenuity solved the problem through standardization. Engineers redesigned components to be completely interchangeable. Any Garand part would fit any Garand rifle, regardless of which factory produced it. This seems obvious today. In 1940, it was revolutionary. Winchester, Springfield Armory, Harrington and Richardson, and International Harvester all produced Garands using identical specifications. A soldier could take parts from 4 different rifles made by 4 different manufacturers and assemble a working weapon. By 1943, production reached 4,000 rifles per day across all manufacturers. By 1944, 5,000 per day. Total production through 1945, over 4 million M1 Garands. For comparison, Germany produced approximately 14 million Kar 98K rifles during the entire war, but most of those replaced the obsolete rifles from World War I that equipped the Wehrmacht in 1939. Net production of new rifles for expanding forces, roughly 7 million. The Americans were producing semi-automatic rifles at rates that approached German production of bolt-action rifles. The technological generation gap between the weapons was staggering. The first encounters. November 8, 1942, Oran, Algeria. Operation Torch. Undeserved Franz Weber and his squad of German advisors to Vichy French forces watched from a defensive position as American infantry advanced up a rocky hillside 300 meters away. "Easy targets," Weber muttered, settling his Kar 98K against his shoulder. He selected an American soldier, led him slightly to account for movement, exhaled, squeezed. The crack of Weber's rifle was answered by a sound he'd never heard. Crack, 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 crack. 8 shots from a single American rifle in less than 3 seconds. The American soldier Weber had shot at dove for cover. The bullet passed overhead. But the return fire forced Weber's entire squad to drop below the rock wall they'd been using for cover. "Machine gun," someone shouted. "No," Weber said slowly, his combat-experienced mind analyzing the sound. "Rifles. Semi-automatic rifles. Every one of them." The Americans advanced by fire and movement. One squad firing continuously while another squad moved. But the fire didn't come just from machine guns. Every single rifleman was putting out sustained, accurate fire. Weber's squad, equipped with bolt-action rifles and 1 MG-34 machine gun, was pinned down by riflemen. This violated everything Weber understood about infantry combat. German doctrine said riflemen couldn't pin an enemy. Only machine guns had sufficient volume of fire. Riflemen engaged targets precisely, while machine guns provided suppression. But these American riflemen were doing both simultaneously. Each soldier was a mini machine gun delivering aimed fire. Weber's squad survived that encounter by retreating. That night, he reported to his company commander, "The Americans have issued semi-automatic rifles to every soldier. Our riflemen cannot match their rate of fire. We need different tactics." His report was noted and ignored. German high command didn't believe that semi-automatic rifles could be reliable enough for general issue. They assumed the Americans had issued a limited number to elite troops, as the Germans had done with experimental weapons. This assumption would cost thousands of German lives. The Herkin Forest meat grinder. September 1944. Herkin Forest, Germany. The densest forest on the Western Front became a nightmare for both sides, but especially for the Germans, whose tactical doctrine had been perfected for the Eastern Front's open terrain. In dense forest, with visibility often under 50 meters, the range advantage of German marksmanship became meaningless. The careful, aimed bolt-action fire that had destroyed Soviet human waves couldn't respond fast enough to American squads that could put 80 rounds downrange in 10 seconds. Gefreiter Hans Moeller described his first firefight in the Hürtgen in his diary, later recovered from his body. "The Americans appeared like ghosts in the fog, 30 meters away. We opened fire. I worked my bolt, chambered another round, aimed, fired again. Maybe 10 seconds passed. I hit one American, saw him fall. Then the sound started. like ripping canvas but louder, continuous, their rifles barking without pause, bark, 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 bark. No gaps between shots like our Mausers, just continuous fire. Schmidt's head exploded beside me. Before I could work my bolt for the third time, Miller was down, shot through the chest. I tried to aim, but splinters from trees were hitting my face. Couldn't see, couldn't think, just noise and death. I fired blindly and ran. 5 of us went into that position. I came out alone. We killed maybe 2 Americans. They killed 4 of us in less than a minute. This is not war. This is execution. The casualty statistics from the Herkin Forest told the story. American casualties, 33,000 in 3 months. German casualties, 28,000 in 3 months. But the kill ratios in infantry engagements had reversed from the early war years. In 1940, German infantry typically inflicted 1.5 to 2 casualties for every casualty they took. In the Hürtgen Forest, that ratio had flipped. American infantry were inflicting 1.3 to 1.5 casualties per casualty they took. The M1 Garand wasn't the only factor. American artillery, air support, and numerical superiority all played roles. But in direct infantry firefights, the Garands' fire superiority proved decisive.
The Sniper's Nightmare. Klaus Becker, the sniper who opened this story, kept a detailed log through his career. The entries from November 1944 reveal the psychological impact of facing Garands. November 3. Engaged American patrol. Killed officer with first shot. Position immediately suppressed by volume of return fire I've never experienced. Counted over 100 rounds hitting my area in first 30 seconds. From riflemen, not machine guns. Impossible to return fire. Withdrew under smoke. November 5. New tactic. Shoot and move immediately. Cannot stay in position for second shot. American riflemen can put fire on my position faster than I can work my bolt. The sound of their rifles is continuous, like machine guns, but more accurate. November 8. Lost Schneider today. He fired, killed an American, went to work his bolt for second shot. American rifleman put 30 rounds into his position before he could fire again. Found him with 11 hits. This weapon changes everything. Our training, our tactics, our doctrine, all obsolete. November 12. Cannot engage American infantry in firefights anymore. They can fire 8 times before I can fire twice. Even if my accuracy is superior, they will hit me through volume of fire. We must ambush and withdraw immediately. No sustained engagements. November 15. Company strength, 43 men, from 126 3 weeks ago. Not from artillery, not from tanks, from rifle fire. American infantry can outshoot German infantry now. How did this happen? How did we not know? November 19. This was Klaus Becker's final entry. His body was found by American soldiers from the 8th Infantry Division, hit by 7 M1 Garand rounds. The American patrol reported receiving sniper fire and immediately returning fire with standard suppressive volume. 7 hits in the time it took Becker to work his bolt twice. The mathematics of firepower had killed one of Germany's most skilled snipers. The Tactical Revolution. December 1944, Battle of the Bulge. The Wehrmacht's last major offensive provided a final demonstration of the Garands' impact. American units, often surrounded and outnumbered, held defensive positions against German attacks that should have overrun them. The 101st Airborne at Bastogne, surrounded and low on ammunition, rationed their M1 Garand ammunition carefully, but still maintained fire superiority over German infantry attacking. A German regimental commander reported, "The American paratroopers are completely surrounded. They have limited ammunition. They should be conserving fire. Instead, they meet every attack with such volume of rifle fire that my men cannot advance. Each American rifleman fires as rapidly as our machine gunners. I don't understand how they have so much ammunition." They didn't have more ammunition. They had more effective ammunition delivery. A soldier with an M1 Garand could fire 80 rounds in less than a minute, more than most German soldiers fired in an entire engagement. Paratroopers at Bastogne reported engaging German infantry at 100 to 150 meters and simply overwhelming them with firepower. German soldiers, trained for careful aimed fire, couldn't process the volume of rounds incoming. They would take cover, try to return fire, and be cut down as they exposed themselves to work their bolts. The mathematics of reality. U.S. Army Ordnance conducted studies in 1945 analyzing infantry engagement outcomes. Rate of fire. M1 Garand, 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute sustained. Kar 98K, 10 to 15 aimed rounds per minute sustained. Effective range. M1 Garand, 440 yards effective, 800 yards maximum. Kar 98K, 500 yards effective, 900 yards maximum. Reload time. M1 Garand, 2 to 3 seconds for 8-round clip. Kar 98K, 6 to 8 seconds for 5-round stripper clip. Probability of hit, 100 to 300 meters. M1 Garand, 30 to 40% per shot. Due to speed of fire, soldiers could fire 3 to 4 times while target was exposed. Kar 98K, 40 to 50% per shot, but only 1 to 2 shots while target was exposed. Effective hit rate in combat. M1 Garand, 1.2 hits per engagement, average. Kar 98K, 0.7 hits per engagement, average. The Garand's inferior accuracy per shot was overwhelmed by its superior rate of fire. In practical combat, at normal engagement ranges, 50 to 300 meters on the Western Front, American Garand-equipped soldiers achieved 70% more hits per engagement than German Kar 98K-equipped soldiers. The maintenance reality. March 1945, American Maintenance Depot in Belgium. Technical Sergeant Robert Hayes stood by a table with 30 M1 Garands, all captured from the 2nd Armored Division after heavy fighting. "How many are functional?" asked the inspecting officer. Hayes worked through them quickly. 27, sir. 3 have damaged gas systems from shrapnel, can be repaired in about 2 hours each." The officer then walked to another table displaying captured German Kar 98K rifles. "And these?" "All functional, sir. Bolt actions are simpler, more robust, hard to break a Mauser." "So, the German rifle is more reliable?" Hayes smiled. "In theory, sir, but here's the thing. We recovered those 30 Garands from disabled tanks and destroyed positions. They'd been exposed to fire, explosion, and weather for days. 27 still work. We service our Garands every week. Average malfunction rate in actual combat? Less than 1%. The Germans had assumed, correctly, that semi-automatic rifles would be less reliable than bolt actions. What they failed to account for was American maintenance standards. Every American infantry company had an armorer. Every regiment had a maintenance section. Garands were cleaned daily, inspected weekly, and immediately replaced if they showed signs of malfunction. The logistics system ensured that spare parts were always available. German maintenance, by contrast, had collapsed by 1944. Kar 98K rifles that developed problems often couldn't be repaired for lack of parts. Soldiers learned to field expedient repairs that affected accuracy and reliability. By late 1944, the average American M1 Garand in combat was better maintained and more reliable than the German Kar 98K, despite the bolt action's theoretical superiority. The sound of defeat. The M1 Garand's distinctive ping sound, the noise of the empty en-bloc clip ejecting after the eighth shot, became psychological warfare. German soldiers learned to recognize that sound. It meant an American rifleman was reloading, theoretically creating a 2-second vulnerability. Some German infantry were trained to listen for the ping and rush the American position during that brief window. This tactic killed many Germans who didn't understand what they were facing. Because by late 1944, American infantry squads had learned to stagger their reloads. When one soldier's Garand pinged, 2 others were covering him with loaded rifles. Germans who rushed toward the sound of a reload ran into aimed fire from soldiers who were waiting for exactly that response. Private First Class James Hendricks described the tactic. "We learned pretty quick that the Krauts would try to rush when they heard someone's clip eject, so we started doing it on purpose. Wilson would empty his rifle, the ping would sound, and we'd wait. Sure enough, some German would pop up or start moving, and we'd nail him. That ping became bait. The sound that Germans thought represented vulnerability became a trap. The rifle they'd mocked as complicated and unreliable became the soundtrack of their defeat."
The final assessment. April 1945. Wehrmacht Infantry School Doberitz, under Allied control. American intelligence officers interviewed captured German infantry officers about American weapons effectiveness. Hauptmann Friedrich Zeller, former company commander with 3 years of combat experience, provided the most comprehensive assessment. The M1 Garand eliminated the German infantry's fundamental tactical advantage, superior marksmanship. We trained our soldiers for 6 months, emphasizing precision and fire discipline. Your soldiers trained for 6 weeks, emphasizing volume of fire. In 1941, our superior training mattered. A German soldier could typically fire more accurately than a Russian soldier, especially at ranges over 200 meters. This allowed us to win firefights even when outnumbered. Against your infantry, this advantage disappeared. Yes, the German soldier firing a Kar 98K was more accurate per shot than an American soldier firing an M1 Garand, but the American soldier fired 4 times as many shots. Superior training couldn't overcome inferior firepower. Your rifle changed the fundamental mathematics of infantry combat. In any engagement, the side that can put more rounds accurately on target in the first 30 seconds usually wins. The M1 Garand allowed your infantry to do that, even with less training and less skill. We mocked your weapon as complicated, fragile, American over-engineering. We were fools. You weaponized your industrial advantage. Every American infantryman carried the firepower of 3 German infantrymen. No amount of training, tactical skill, or fighting spirit could overcome that mathematics. The Eastern Front taught us that courage matters. The Western Front taught us that firepower matters more. Your rifle represented American industrial philosophy. Adequate quality produced rapidly beats perfect quality produced slowly. That philosophy destroyed the Wehrmacht. The human cost. The statistics of the Western European campaign tell a story of reversed fortunes. German infantry casualties, June 1944 to May 1945, approximately 1,400,000. American infantry casualties, same period, 586,000. The kill ratio had reversed from the early war years. The Wehrmacht that had inflicted 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 casualties against their opponents in Poland, France, and early Russia was now taking 2.4-to-1 casualties against American infantry. The M1 Garand wasn't the only factor.
American artillery, air power, armor, and logistics all contributed. But in direct infantry combat, the Garand made American soldiers more lethal than German soldiers for the first time in the war. Behind every statistic was a German soldier who died because he couldn't fire fast enough. Behind every number was an American soldier who lived because he could put 8 rounds downrange before his enemy could fire 3. Klaus Becker, the sniper who opened the story, was one of 28,000 German soldiers killed by rifle fire in the Herkin Forest. His death wasn't heroic or cinematic. He exposed himself for his third shot of an engagement. 7 American riflemen happened to have him in their sights. All 7 fired within the same 2-second window. 3 rounds missed, 4 hit. The riflemen who killed Becker never knew they'd killed a decorated sniper with 257 confirmed kills. They knew only that they had taken fire, returned fire in volume, and the firing had stopped. Standard procedure. The M1 Garand had made killing efficient, almost industrial. The post-war reckoning. U.S. Army Infantry School, Fort Benning, Georgia. General Anthony McAuliffe, commander of the 101st Airborne at Bastogne, gave a lecture to post-war infantry officers. Gentlemen, I want to talk about a weapon that saved my division, possibly my life, and certainly the Battle of Bastogne, the M1 Garand rifle. We were surrounded, outnumbered approximately 4-1, low on ammunition, no resupply, facing some of Germany's best infantry. By every tactical calculation, we should have been overrun. We held primarily because of one fact. Every single one of my riflemen could outshoot 3 German riflemen in the time it took to sing one verse of Bless Them All. When the Germans attacked, my men didn't have to aim carefully for a perfect shot. They could snap fire, miss, and immediately fire again, and again, and again, 8 times before reloading. The Germans had to make every shot count, because working that bolt gave us time to fire back. The mathematics were brutal. German soldier aims, fires, works bolt, 2 seconds. My soldier aims, fires again, same 2 seconds, 3 times as many shots downrange. The Germans brought precision to a firefight. We brought volume. Volume 1. General Patton called the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. I won't contradict General Patton, but I'll add this. The M1 Garand was the weapon that proved American industrial democracy could create individual weapons as revolutionary as our tanks and planes. We didn't just outproduce the Germans, we out-innovated them where it mattered most, in the hands of the ordinary infantryman. Remember this, the soldier carrying the best weapon usually beats the soldier carrying the traditional weapon. The American infantryman in 1944 carried the future. The German infantryman carried the past. The past lost.
The German perspective. West Germany. Friedrich Zeller, the Wehrmacht captain quoted earlier, had become a colonel in the new Bundeswehr. In an interview with a military historian, he reflected on the M1 Garand. People ask me what lost the war for Germany. There are many answers. Soviet manpower, Allied air power, Hitler's strategic mistakes, industrial capacity. All true. But for the ordinary German infantryman, what lost the war was simpler. We brought 19th century rifles to a 20th century war. We believed superior training and marksmanship would overcome American firepower. We were wrong. I commanded a company in Normandy, the Herkin Forest and the Bulge. The common element in all our defeats was simple. American infantry could shoot faster than we could, much faster.
In close-range firefights, speed of fire mattered more than accuracy of fire. The M1 Garand didn't just outshoot the Kar 98K, it made American infantry tactics work. Your soldiers could advance under fire because they could put down suppressive fire from their rifles, not just machine guns. They could assault positions because every man provided covering fire. They could defend against counterattacks because the volume of fire from a single squad matched what we needed a platoon to produce. We mocked the M1 Garand as complicated American over-engineering. It was actually elegant American problem-solving. Give every soldier enough firepower to fight effectively without relying on heavy weapons. Make every rifleman a force multiplier. The Bundeswehr learned this lesson. When we rebuilt our army, we armed every soldier with the G3 battle rifle, semi-automatic, 20-round magazine, modern successor to your M1 Garand. We learned that individual firepower matters more than we ever imagined. The M1 Garand taught us that lesson. It cost us 1.4 million casualties to learn it, but we learned. The technical legacy. The M1 Garand remained the U.S. Army's standard rifle through the Korean War. When Marines at the Chosin Reservoir were asked what saved them during the Chinese human wave attacks, they cited two things: artillery and the M1 Garand's ability to deliver rapid, aimed fire. By the late 1950s, the M1 Garand was replaced by the M14, which was essentially a selective-fire M1 Garand with a 20-round detachable magazine. The M14 was replaced by the M16, which owed its existence to lessons learned with the Garand. Semi-automatic fire from every rifleman wins firefights. Today, every military rifle in the world is semi-automatic or automatic. The bolt-action rifle survives only in specialized sniper roles. This evolution started with the M1 Garand proving that semi-automatic fire was not just feasible, but superior for infantry combat. Modern combat rifles, the M4, AK-47, G36, FAMAS, all descendants of the M1 Garand's revolutionary concept, give every soldier the ability to fire repeatedly without manual operation between shots. The final word. Klaus Becker's Karabiner 98K sniper rifle, serial number 4272K, is preserved in the U.S. Army Infantry Museum at Fort Benning. Beside it is an information placard. This rifle was carried by Oberfeldwebel Klaus Becker, credited with 257 confirmed kills on the Eastern and Western fronts. Becker was killed November 19, 1944, in the Hürtgen Forest by American infantry armed with M1 Garands. Becker's death symbolized the transition from one era of warfare to another. He was a master of precision marksmanship with a bolt-action rifle, skills perfected over centuries. He was killed by volume of fire from semi-automatic rifles, technology that rendered precision marksmanship less decisive than firepower. The weapon that killed Becker represented not just technological advancement, but philosophical revolution. Adequate accuracy delivered rapidly defeats perfect accuracy delivered slowly. This principle would define infantry combat for the remainder of the 20th century. Next to Becker's Karabiner 98K sits an M1 Garand, serial number 1564893, carried by Private First Class James Hendricks, 8th Infantry Division. The placard reads, "This rifle was present at the engagement where Oberfeldwebel Klaus Becker was killed. PFC Hendricks fired 24 rounds during the 8-minute firefight, reloading 3 times. His squad of 8 men fired approximately 190 rounds, killing or wounding 12 German soldiers. The disparity in volume of fire determined the engagement's outcome. PFC Hendricks survived the war. He kept this rifle until his death in 1988, calling it the weapon that kept me alive. The M1 Garand kept approximately 16 million American servicemen alive through World War II and Korea, providing firepower superiority that saved countless lives." The contrast between the two rifles, sitting side by side in museum cases, tells the complete story. One represents the perfection of 19th-century military rifle design. The other represents the beginning of modern infantry weapons. One served its user well for centuries of warfare. The other rendered that service obsolete in 4 years. Klaus Becker was a skilled soldier, carrying an excellent weapon. He died because his enemies carried a revolutionary weapon. No amount of skill, training, or courage could overcome that disadvantage. The mathematics of firepower are inexorable. 8 rounds in 4 seconds beats 2 rounds in 4 seconds, regardless of accuracy. German snipers and riflemen learned this lesson throughout 1944 and 1945. Most learned it the way Klaus Becker did. In the last 8 minutes of their lives, facing a weapon they'd mocked and underestimated, discovering too late that American industrial innovation had changed warfare itself. The M1 Garand didn't just outshoot German rifles, it ended an era. The age of the expert rifleman carefully placing precise shots gave way to the age of the infantry squad delivering overwhelming firepower. Traditional marksmanship became secondary to speed of fire. The perfect shot mattered less than sufficient shots delivered rapidly. German soldiers with 257 confirmed kills died to American soldiers with 8 rounds and 4 seconds. The future defeated the past. The M1 Garand defeated the Kar 98K. And the sound of that defeat, the continuous barking of semi-automatic fire, punctuated by the distinctive ping of empty clips ejecting, became the soundtrack of German infantry's destruction on the Western Front. Klaus Becker couldn't believe what American M1 Garands did to his elite unit in 8 minutes. By the time he understood, it was too late to matter. The revolution had arrived, the future had won, and the ping of ejecting clips was the last sound thousands of German soldiers heard before American firepower superiority ended their war permanently.